Yep, it's perfect. Yep, Nikki. All right, starting in fact. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and I'm pleased to invite you all to the LLM series by Planty. And today, we'll be covering an LLM in International Law from the Tufts University of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Towards the end of this session, we will also be having a Q&A session for which I would request you all to put your questions in the live chat box. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Swati Singh, a graduate of the 2018 batch of GNLU or the Gujarat National Law University. She then went on to pursue her LLM in International Law from the Tufts University, the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in 2019. She's previously been a consultant for the 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transport of ownership of cultural property unit of the culture section at UNESCO Paris. In today's session, Swati will be speaking in detail on the application process for this LLM, as well as the opportunities that are available both during and after completing an LLM in international law. I would now like to hand it over to Swati to begin this session.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you to Planty for inviting me for the session. Before I begin to talk about the specific questions related to the application process and so on and so forth, I'll just give a very brief introduction to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. So Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy is part of the Tufts University. It is the international law school for international relations, in fact, international relations school for the Tufts University. It started, I mean, it's about 85, 86-year-olds now, and it started it was a collaboration between Harvard and Tufts, which was and the school erstwhile was international relations plus public policy. And now we have two distinct schools. Of course, there's the Harvard Kennedy School for Public Policy, and you have the Fletcher School for International Relations, right? Of course, one of the most major degrees for Fletcher and why it's majorly known has been the MALT program. It's in the Masters of Arts in Law and Diplomacy, and I believe we've had a session on that. Today, for this series, I'm going to focus on another very known degree that Fletcher School offers, which is the LLM in International Law. The reason why I say it's very unique and famous is because it's very different from your existing law degrees and existing master degrees that are offered in most of these colleges, right? The LM in Fletcher School is specifically focused on international law, both private as well as public, and that's pretty much the exclusive arena when it comes to LLM at Fletcher. And the reason why I'm specifying this so much is because that's something that has to be kept in mind when you're considering Fletcher for your LLM program. The reason why they've stuck with the idea of international law is because they are an international relations school, and based on the curriculum that they offer you, it is mandatory for you to pick up some courses from the international relations aspect as well as international law, of course, if you're going for an LLM degree, right? So here's how the courses are distinguished at Fletcher. You have three sort of major divisions. One is related to business and administration, which is a fairly new one that's come up. The second one is, of course, the international law and organizations, and the third one is called diplomacy, history, and politics. Right. So in case you were going for a mold, I'm not going to go into detail, but if you're going for a mall, then you have to take maximum number of courses from the DHP, which is the Diplomacy, History, and Politics section. If you're going for an LLM, then maximum number of your courses have to be from the ILO division, which would be International Law and Organizations. And in case you're going for an MIB degree, which is called the Masters in International Business, then most of your courses have to be from the EIB division, right? Having said that, the great sort of opportunity or the chance that Fletcher offers you is that it is mandatory for you to have, and by you I mean each student that applies and gets through Fletcher, it is mandatory for each student to pick up at least a course from all the three divisions, right? So for example, if I go for an LLM degree, then my maximum courses have to be from the ILO division, but I also have to take at least one course from DHP and at least one course from EIB. The same would go for mall. If you were going for mall, then maximum number of your courses have to be from DHP, but you have to take at least one course from the law section and one course from the business administration section. I think the reasoning behind going for something like this is to prepare you in a very holistic way. Like when you get out of Fletcher, the aim is that you're not just specializing in that one core area that you selected for yourself, but you also have some sort of knowledge and some sort of, I mean, I wouldn't say expertise, but some sort of knowledge which is enough for you to get out there and apply for other areas in case you need to, right? Just to give you an example, there were a lot of people who ended up, let's say, going for law of the sea or going for international human rights as per the law curriculum, and as per their business curriculum, they were going for projects like courses like project finance. They were going for courses like microeconomics. So these are very MBA and business based courses, and yet they offer you a great opportunity to sort of combine all of these together. Um, I'm just going to segue into my reasons for applying to Fletcher. Fletcher, in fact, is the only LLM program that I applied. All the other courses that I applied to were more towards public policy. So the reason why I'm telling this is to give you a fair understanding of how LLM of Fletcher stands out as compared to other LLMs that are offered in US or Europe. So LLM at Fletcher, like I said, is it's a multidisciplinary approach. And the other thing with the classes when it comes to LLM program at Fletcher is that it's a mixed bundle, right? You don't just have law graduates sitting there. You have a mix of business students who've come from the EIB, which is the administration section. You have people who've come from the DHP, which is the MALL program. So people who are through and through about political science and who are about international relations and so on and so forth. So the class becomes very interesting. Like even the discussions related to law and treaties actually sort of end up becoming very, very versatile and becoming this sort of encompass a lot of issues and a lot of pointers that probably if you are a graduate from a law school and if you've been a student of law through and through your life, it's a very, very fresh perspective. And I think that is something, of course, that I was aware of before entering into Fletcher, and that became one of my most important reasons to only focus on Fletcher's LLM degree. Um, Another thing that I want to sort of draw your attention to is that the reason why I said public policy as well as LLM at Fletcher is because there is a good similarity between the public policy courses offered everywhere else and the LLM and the MALL program offered at Fletcher, because the kind of curriculum that you get, it's completely up to you as to make your curriculum. If I was to show my subjects, it's not just law. There's a lot of mix and match of humanitarian initiatives and external humanitarian aid and things like entrepreneurship and security law, and of course security, just general security, internal external security in world, so in the international relations. So my course curriculum also sort of is pretty much a picture of what Fletcher is about. The idea is to go out there and explore as much as you can and maybe gain experience in other fields that you probably won't end up doing in case you were just focusing on a law degree throughout your career span. That's me, right? You also have a lot of specialists when it comes to people who apply to Fletcher. So there are people who've, let's say, who've applied to Fletcher only because they wanted to focus on law of the sea, right? Or only because they've had a keen interest in how international organizations work, or people who have or who know that they want to work in the field of international humanitarian law. So it is in a way a place for all the two kinds of students. If you are a specialist and if you already have an international law area that you are keen to explore, Fletcher LLM is the place for you. Or if you are the kind of person who wants to sort of dip your toes in different areas and explore more, I think Fletcher is again for you. And I would be the sort of an example for that. Um, that's Fletcher, and the way the degrees are sort of distinguished and how it's different from the technical and the usual LM programs that the other law schools have to offer you. We'll just come to the application process of it. We'll first start with when to apply and who is the person and how can you apply and things like that. So generally, the LLM program at Fletcher requires you to have about, I think, 2 to 4 years of average professional experience, and I think it's recommended if you have that kind of experience. And I'm going to explain why. Even as for mall, I think for mall the professional experience required is a little more than just 2 4 years. I think it runs to 5 years or more. And EIB, of course, is again the same. EIB, like I said, is the business degree, so it's equivalent to an MBA program, but it's not called MBA because it's again a very multidisciplinary approach to business administration that Fletcher offers. So they call it the EIB, oh sorry, MIB, Masters in International Business. um, Now, the reason why professional experience matters when you're going for a course like this is because they expect you to have this basic level, foundational level of understanding of how to operate in international environment and how to sort of uh, the uh, the one thing that you have to keep in mind is, like most of the master universities, Fletcher is a place which will guide you, but ultimately it's a lot about the way that you train yourself and your decisions as to how you want to sort of segue your way through the like I don't so many options that the Fletcher degree is going to offer you. And I think that's the reason why they expect you to have a basic level of professional experience, so that you have more clarity in your head as to where you want to go to, right? And of course, the standard that Fletcher wants to maintain for itself is very high. If I gave you an example of the LLM program, it's very competitive. Your maximum number of student strength is limited to let's say only 15 or 20 seats in one academic year, right? And we're talking about, I don't know how many applications from the entire world, and you have only 15 and 20 seats, and this is the maximum limit. I think before I joined Fletcher, the batch that graduated before me, I'm talking about LLM, was restricted to about 7 8 students at max. So the thing to note here is that they don't have a fixed number of applications that they draw. Of course, they place a limit to 15 20 students and not beyond that, because they want the LLM program to be a very personalized interaction. um, when you go inside, I mean, I'm going to talk about how to get in Fletcher, but that's even when you go inside and when you select it and you sort of interact with the law professors, it's a very very personal relationship. As soon as you enter, within the first week you're allotted a mentor, and that mentor is going to be with, it depends on your resume, it depends on your career progression, it depends on how you sort of see yourself evolving and what do you expect out of yourself to be learning from Fletcher. Based on all of these criteria, a professor is going to be allotted to you as your mentor, and that individual is I mean, you can have interactions with them. They can guide you not just about your days at Fletcher, but also beyond. So that's a great opportunity. And the reason why I say it's great is because a lot of most of the Fletcher professors have a vast amount of experiences. A lot of them have years of experience in as domestic lawyers, as international lawyers, as people working with the UN. So you have a great team out there to sort of guide you through Fletcher and beyond. The other way that they sort of maintain this personalized approach is that as soon as you enter the LLM program, before you're allocated your course, or before you rather select your own courses and make your own module, there is an associate director of the LLM program who's going to meet each one of you, and sort of discuss with you what you can take and what you should not. She's going to help you figure out the course credits. She's going to help you figure out the courses which might suit you more than the others. So it's a great collaboration, and at least for me, I found that very helpful, because I think most of us will agree the Indian system, when it comes to how the colleges are run and how we're allotted courses, is very different from how the US operates in this case, right? So having that one person who could guide me through was a great experience, and it honestly helped a lot, because of course you have a lot of students around you to help you, but the thing with master colleges is that the most of the degrees end in 1 year or 2 years, so you don't technically have seniors out there to guide you. And the faculty who's in there, who's helping you, the fact that they're ever ready to help you through it, it's great, right? It's a great feeling, and of course you are also more clear in your head as to what approach can possibly be taken. So that's about the personalized approach that LLM will offer you right in the beginning. Okay. Coming back to how do you apply, it's pretty much the same procedure as for MALD, as for EIB, and as for most of the colleges in US, I would say, right? There's a resume involved, there's a personal statement involved. There'll be two personal statements involved, I think. One of them would be a random abstract topic that they'll give you and they'll ask you to write on it, and the other would be about why would you want to join and what do you wish to learn and things like that. I suggest that you pay a lot of attention to your application, and I think this is not new. I think everybody who applies to these programs will tell you that. LLM at Fletcher is very, very competitive. You don't have a lot of seats, and there are a lot of people that you're competing with. So I suggest first there needs to be a clarity in your head, what courses you want to pursue. So if you are the kind of person who's also interested in, let's say, a US tax system, then Fletcher is not the place for you, right? Only because it's a US school does not mean that you have to go to Fletcher. If you're more interested in the US domestic law system and how that mechanism works, then maybe the other top schools are a better option for you. Okay, maybe Harvard, maybe Columbia, maybe NYU, maybe Berkeley. So that's how that goes. Of course, there are about 8 courses that you have to take. The 8 courses would be spread across for 9 months, which is the academic session for the LLM program. 4 courses a semester. There is a certain level of credits that you have to finish. The most compulsory requirement for an LLM is a capstone project. Again, this is very different from your dissertations that are offered at usual law schools, right? At Capstone, if you're a public policy student or if you've done public policy before, Capstone is generally a kind of master thesis that people at public policy or people write towards the end of the program, right? So, of course, you can look at it as a thesis or a dissertation. The deal with the LLM Capstone is too, it can be very challenging, because right when you enter the LLM, there needs to be a basic idea in your head as to what would you want your capstone to be about. Because when you get a mentor, that is probably one of the first questions that they are going to end up discussing with you. So thinking about the dissertation and thinking about what you want to explore at LLM uh, sort of really helps at this stage. Again, one of the reasons why it's important to have some sort of professional idea or some professional experience as to how you want to go about this. um, uh, the good thing about Capstone is you get to team up with, like I said, great mentors who are going to help you. I was personally assigned one of the best mentors that I could imagine at Fletcher, and it was a great experience because they had a huge amount of experience in that area, and you have a lot of faculty like that. The After the capstone, there is a capstone retreat that usually happens, and this is very specific to LLM program. No other program at Fletcher would offer you this, and I don't believe a lot of law schools outside Tufts also offer this. um, there's a capstone retreat where all the law professors sort of meet, and all the LLM candidates, they meet together. They go on an off-campus tour, which is right at the end of the academic session, so you don't miss out on classes. And each student, each candidate has to discuss their capstone and talk about it. And it's a good presentation. It's a proper I don't exactly remember the time of the presentation, but you have to go in detail and talk about everything that you've done as part of your capstone. All the professors, from the dean of the LLM department, of all the professors, everybody sort of sits there to assess and talk about and discuss. So it's a great opportunity for you to get inputs and for you to sort of use that, utilize that, if you want to develop it further, or if you want to go for PhD and things like that. One thing to keep in mind is that capstone is not part of the grading criteria. You're already graded before you enter your capstone retreat, but it is still an excellent and, of course, a mandatory requirement for you to attend, because it offers an excellent opportunity for you to interact with all the law professors. The reason I keep highlighting these little instances where Fletcher offers you to connect with professors and with other candidates is because, keep in mind that the LLM program usually is very limited as compared to mall, where you have 2 year program and you have ample amount of time to interact and network with people. LLM can be very limited, and it also can be very hectic because you essentially have the same number of requirements as a mall, but only within the span of 9 months, right? So in that 9 months, my suggestion would be to sort of avail all the opportunities that the LLM program has to offer you, because that ultimately ensures that you get the same experience and you get the same result out of your degree as a mall candidate would. So that's about the personalized approach that LLM would offer you. And like I said, pretty much a regular affair. Personal statement. You have your resume. You have to add a professional reference. I think you can have one academic and one professional experience, but again, professional is a mandatory criteria there. So this again reflects on the importance of having some professional expertise, because you need one of those people to recommend you for Fletcher. Um, that's about how to apply, when to apply. I might also add that, as you can see from the introduction, I graduated in 2018 and I ended up joining Fletcher in the year 2018 itself. So right after graduation, I didn't have a lot of professional experience, but that's because I already was working while in my undergrad. And I think that sort of professional experience and my consultancy, all of this really added, because my research and my work, everything was inclined towards international law. So even when I was preparing my resume, I didn't really have to, or even my recommendation letters, I didn't have to like prove my sort of inclination towards that field, because everything that I had done in the past 4 or 5 years in law school had ended up being about international law in a way. But having said that, of course, there's so many of us who are kind of if you're in fourth year, if you're in third year, you're already sort of discussing whether you should be sitting for placements or not. And if you're one of those people, that's not a problem. You shouldn't be worried about it. It's always great to have sit down like after your degree, gain some experience for a year or two, and then apply for Fletcher. Or even if you're in law school and you have a year or something, maybe work towards proving that you have an inclination towards it, right? And by that I mean, of course, writing research papers and interacting on symposiums relating to international law, because that might also sort of better your employment opportunities in that area. Um, Coming to my personal experience with the application procedure, like I said, most of the things have pretty been regular and it's the same as most law schools. But I wanted to highlight some 2 or 3 things which are slightly different, and things that you could make use of in case you are one of those people who's not had a very good experience and who does not have a great knowledge of how to go about applying to international universities, right? So for the first thing is that you can be very very active on your emails and about your doubts and clarifications when it comes to Fletcher, and I believe that is the case for most of the top law schools in Europe or in United States. But if you have any doubt, feel free to shoot them a mail. The administration department is extremely friendly. The admissions department is going to help you with any possible issues that you might have, any concerns that you might have. And in case they don't have an answer to that, they will be sure to direct you to the person who might. Okay. And sometimes that means ending up chatting with students. In fact, the Fletcher School and the admissions department sometimes hires a lot of existing students to help with these queries. So there's a very high likelihood that the person who's responding to your mail is a student. And in such questions, because they've probably been through the same sort of doubts as you, they're very, very approachable and they're very helpful when it comes to such clarifications. The other thing is, Fletcher organizes these coffee house events in most of the countries. A lot of students, for example, you have a bunch of students graduating from India who go to Fletcher, and they sort of offer Fletcher that they might want to host a coffee hour in their particular town, and Fletcher might look into it and allow you. So you have a couple of coffee events which are very, very regularly held in Delhi and held in Mumbai. So if you're in either of the two cities, it's a great opportunity to interact with the existing fellows. Um, it's also great because the people who'd be interacting with are the people from your own country who've ended up making it to Fletcher. So there is a more personal sort of relationship that can be formed. And you also have the thing that once you, a lot of these coffee hours happen before the admission and after the admission. So if you're lucky enough to get called by Fletcher, then you can go there and meet people who as you have been called by Fletcher, and that means you already have this small group that you can interact with, and you feel more comfortable when you enter another country. um, and in case you don't do that, at least that's a great platform to sort of raise queries and raise your doubts and sort of resolve whatever questions you might have regarding the application procedure. And of course, it's not online, it's a more personal thing, so you can be more comfortable, especially for a lot of people who have difficulty in asking questions on like platforms like this. The third thing that they offer is a mentor mentee thing. This is different from the professor that's sort of attached to you as a mentor. In this mentor mentee collaboration, they have a student, an existing student, who acts as your mentor. This is mostly a thing in case you've already been accepted by Fletcher, where uh, a student mentor is going to help you, guide you, and he or she is going to help you with whatever doubts you have. They're going to help you with any existing help you might need while they are at Fletcher. And the bunch is really helpful. And I think most often than not, you end up with a kind of person who will be very, very willing to interact with you and helping you out. And of course, you can always hit up the recent graduates on LinkedIn, or just like interact with these people. I sort of very regularly get calls from people who want to get to Fletcher, and most of us are very, very happy to sort of help. So these are some of my personal experiences that you can gain out of when it comes to the application procedure. um, I think I've already talked about my insights on why I chose Fletcher. It's unique. The LLM is not the traditional LLM that law schools offer. It is more of an international relation, international law based LLM, and it worked perfectly for me because that's exactly what I was looking for. It's a very, very tight knit community. Even for mall, even though the strength is far higher than Llm program, it's still quite restricted, which means it's a great opportunity for you to interact. Another thing with Fletcher is that Fletcher is one of those very old law schools which still offers you a dorm system, and which you, if you're lucky enough to get allotted one of those, and as a lottery, you get to interact with a lot of existing students. And that's a personal approach that I think most of us can relate to, because if you're a law graduate, an LU graduate from India, you know that help that's required out of a residential schooling system, right? So that kind of really helps you in forming those personal interactions, and you become an even tighter knit community. And while right now it sounds like it's like a family affair, but the reason why I say this is because it's very, very handy once you graduate. Once you're out there in the world, you need to interact, you need to find those fellow Fletcher graduates to help you out and to sort of guide you through whatever positions that are available or whatever areas that you could explore. So I think it's a great opportunity that Fletcher offers, and in case you get a chance, then that's something that you should definitely avail of. um, I'll come straight away to what sort of opportunities are available after you graduate from the LLM program at Fletcher, because that's the main thing, right? That's the real deal. That's why we're all here. The great thing about LLM from Fletcher is it's not restricted to an area, like I've already said, which means that the amount of options that you have is not at all limited, right? So you could be focusing on IGOs, you could be focusing on NGOs. NGOs, because you get options to explore like humanitarian aid and courses that you can take related to NGOs and social impact assessments and things like that. Um, you can focus through and through on development sector. You can still choose to sort of continue with your um, consulting opportunities in the legal field, or uh, I mean, there are so many options. I think if you have more questions about a specific field, then I'll be at a better place to answer that. But the idea is that you won't be restricted. Like, it's, in fact, one of the interesting things is that because of your law degree here, you can still end up taking a bar outside in the States. So that's also an excellent opportunity if you want to segue into litigation in the States. So, like I said, there's no restriction out there. The idea is that you sort of tailor your course requirements in a way that reflects your inclination towards a particular field post graduation. And once you're there, I think it's easy for you. Uh, I, I don't think there are a lot of myths or anything about the application procedure at Fletcher. It's fairly simple, fairly direct. The you can use the website as a guide. It's very direct. That's all I had when I was applying to Fletcher. Um, of course, the great thing when I applied for Fletcher for me was I was just graduating from GNLU, and LLM Fletcher back in those days required you to take GRE. Okay, and GRE was compulsory if you were going for a mold program, which is something that I thought I would be more tailored for because I had an interest in public policy. But because I did not have the time to take my GREs, I chose LLM as an option. So that was a great way for me to, that was a great help. LLM sort of offered me that help. Now, of course, that's not needed because I think they've removed the GRE requirement for mold as well. So, but that's one thing that can be kept in mind, that at least that's one of the reasons how I chose to go for LLM instead of mold. And I think there were a bunch of people like me out in Fletcher who sort of had to make that decision. Um, that's about it. That's the general queries related to Fletcher. I think another important aspect is the finance issue. That's not something that's discussed a lot, and I think it's important if students got to know about it. Fletcher has a great sort of incentive. It has a great way of incentivizing students to join in. It offers a decent amount of scholarships every year. Uh, of course, you have to remember that it is going for that kind of uniformity at Fletcher. So one person might not end up getting a lot of money in terms of scholarship, but in place of that, Fletcher would probably go for an option where it can fund 3-4 students, even if the money is not a lot. Okay, and I think that's a good thing because the number of students at Fletcher are restricted, and they want to give an equal opportunity to all students too, and they want to try and ease off burden for everyone. One good thing about that is I don't remember a requirement of writing a huge letter for your scholarships. Sometimes you don't have the time, especially when you're applying to multitude of colleges. You're automatically considered for a scholarship based on your merit and based on your experience and things like that. That's one great option to avail, and something that's important if you're looking at an international degree, and um, especially international relations. Sometimes the jobs can come after a huge expanse of time, and I think having that support in terms of finances is a great boost. It's a great help. The other thing is Fletcher offers you a part-time employment within the campus. Of course, I don't mean everybody gets to work at Fletcher or work at the Tufts campus, but you have regularly you have openings coming up, and you can always go ahead and apply and use those. And of course, that's applicable to a U.S. citizen and also applicable to the non-U.S. citizen. So that's again a great help. At least it helps you finance your monthly expenditure in a way, and it's a minimum, it's based on a minimum hourly work that you do there, and so it ends up giving you a good amount of money, if not great. The third option that finances at Fletcher can be covered through, it's called the Loan Repayment Assistance Program. I think it's a Tufts program, and they offer you a kind of assistance where they might end you might end up with particular jobs which might not be very gratifying and very well paying, but it does the job of helping you finance if you've taken loan and if you're under a lot of debt. So I suggest if there are these particular options that you're interested in, then go through the website and directly deal with the departments who are handling these, because they'll be at a much better position to guide you through it. But the reason I wanted to mention them is because I know finances is something that a lot of us consider while we're selecting our respective degrees, and therefore uh, it helps to know the options that you have. So that's pretty much from my end about Fletcher, about my experience with the application process, and of course, a couple of things that you need to know about housing and finance that will help you sort of make a decision in a better way. The other thing that I just sort of it slipped my mind, but it's important to talk about is that Fletcher offers you an opportunity to cross-register with schools at Boston. Right now, I think it's limited to Harvard and the other sub-programs at the Tufts School. Tufts University, and I think it's a great opportunity that we can explore. So Boston, as we know, it's the hub. It's the hub of really. It's a very charged atmosphere, and you have students from MIT, you have students from Harvard, you have students from Fletcher, and it's a great platform for you to interact. And so I think city also plays a very important role. And if you're in a city and you have a course which is offering you a legit way to interact with people from other schools and sort of gaining out of the expertise of professors that are teaching in other schools, then it's something that you can consider while making your decision. um, and of course, I'm one of those people who ended up studying and doing 25% of my course as part of this program from another law school. And I think it's a great atmosphere. I think it's a great chance to explore two very distinct methodologies of teaching and to sort of gain something out of both of them. So yeah, that's pretty much from my end regarding very specific questions about Fletcher and Tufts in general and about the LLM program. But if there are any specific questions, then I'm happy to answer.
Thanks a lot, Swati. I think that was a very detailed session. So thanks a lot for addressing all of those points with respect to the LLM and also talking about your experience. Moving to the Q&A sessions, I do have a couple of questions for you today. You did mention that this LLM has a very important focus on international law and also on international relations. I was just wondering if there is also this focus of the admissions department on your applications in terms of if you have any kind of international law experience in your undergraduations when you're applying for this degree, and how you could actually get that kind of experience on your CV, given that in India, I think even if law schools do offer that, it's just like a one semester course where you do international law in brief, but that's about it.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I think that sort of brings you back to the entire base of the LLM program at Fletcher, and it's a very important requirement, and it's not important. It's actually quite mandatory. Once you enter the LLM program, there is a brief introduction session, and you're expected to explain your sort of relationship with that. Okay, and again, you've raised an important point here, especially if you're talking about Indian students. We don't have a very good exposure when it comes to international law. I was very lucky because I was offered an internship at one of the international organizations in Paris back in 2016. And that sort of really ended up boosting my application for this particular program. A lot of people, I mean, there were other people at Fletcher who've been working with UN Women. There was somebody who was working with, I mean, so there's a it's a two-way process. Okay, one of them is once you're at Fletcher, of course your way to these organization becomes easier, and you're expected to sort of find your way through in a more smooth fashion. But it's also important to remember that some basic experience is already expected out of you when you are entering Fletcher, right? And I think internships is it's a great opportunity, and don't limit yourselves to India. But of course, you have so many international organizations who they have a lot of offices in India. So explore that. Explore. You have regular career opportunities and internships that are coming out of UNDP, coming out of so many institutions that are here in India. So explore that. I think study a lot of international relations, and by study I mean research, write, talk about it, discuss about it, and maybe create your profile, create your knowledge in that sector. So even if you don't have a lot of professional experience in that particular moment when you're graduating from your NLUs, at least you have a uh, basic understanding of the law, which sort of helps you maybe find better opportunities right after graduation. So, like I said, the pressure is very intense if you are expecting that you want to get an LLM at Fletcher right after graduation. It's easier when you already have a professional experience after graduation. So I would suggest go for latter. It's more comfortable, and in you, I think the student is in a much mature position to make that decision more clearly. Okay, I had that opportunity right in law school, and you have a lot of international law firms who have these little certificate courses with national law schools. You have so many international faculty who comes to respective NLUs for as visiting faculties for sessions. So I think there are a lot of ways. The idea is that you interact with the right kind of people, you sort of pursue the right kind of courses, and you have more clarity in your head as to the kind of law that you're focusing on, right? And I think with the perfect blend of these three, your options get far easier. But I think you have to keep in mind that if you're talking about a profession in international law, then they expect it's a strange requirement that even for entry level jobs there is an expectation of some amount of professional experience. So I think that is right after graduation from your undergrad, this is the time when you can really explore that opportunity.
For sure, yep, that makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, I come to my next question, which is actually about, which is I think very specific to you, since you had made it to the Fletcher School straight out of your 5-year undergraduation program. So I just want to understand what were some of the considerations that you had in your mind when you were deciding that, okay, this is the right LLM for me, and more specifically, an LLM in international law is the right LLM for me, given that in those 5 years you've experienced all the different subjects, and how can somebody be sure that this is the right thing for me, this is what I want to go ahead and make a career in?
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't know if I have a very specific answer to that, but and obviously I'm not going to say I've been lucky like that, because it's a product of a lot of experiences you have in law school, I guess. So GNLU back in those times was offering, like while I was in my second year or first year, GNLU was offering these international law courses. Okay, and back then our director, or our VC, he was part like he was an international law guy. So I think there was some um, like there was a good amount of exposure in JNLU about international law. And I right in the beginning of my law school, I had already begun my internships as researchers for international organizations. So for example, one of my very first internships was with Oxfam. So just sort of having that little experience in internships and researching on topics related to international law. Secondly, I was writing papers, and I was going for presentations, and a lot of these presentations involved people from, of course, outside the country, and interacting with these people gives you a sense of very different atmosphere and the kind of education exposure you have from them. So I think those little things uh, made me decide that I want a degree which is outside India, because now I want to experience the other mode of learning. And B, like I said, I actually was, because I said I was a lot into researching and writing and things like that, so I was more into public policy. And in fact, the other three or four colleges that I ended up applying to were all about public policy. But when I saw Fletcher, and when I looked at LLM, interestingly, there was a professor in my law school who was sort of very sure that I need to apply for Fletcher because I am made for it. So it's not me who sort of just woke up one day and decided Fletcher is my dream. It's somebody. There were people around me who kind of saw what I was going for and guided me through it and told me that maybe this is something that you have to look at. And of course, once people show you that confidence, I kind of went through, looked up the whole thing, and I realized that that's exactly what I needed. Like I needed um, a course which is not just about law, and it's still about law, right? So I am looking at international law. I wanted an LLM instead of a mall degree, because LLM, even just by the nomenclature of it, is more professionally recognized if you're deciding to come back to India. Even if you're back in the States or any other country, as a matter of fact, LLM would be easier to recognize and easier to explain. So that's one of the practical sort of considerations I had in my head. And the other thing is, like I said, Fletcher was offering me a one time opportunity to interact with the business students and interacting with international relations and public policy students at the same time, sitting in the same classroom, learning the same course. and no other school was offering me that. And the reason, public policy was one of my preferences, exactly for the same reason, because public policy offers you a plethora of courses, and that means that there is a variety of students that end up coming and taking up the course. So when I saw that LLM is offering the same kind of opportunity, the same kind of interactions, and offering me a professional degree in law, I thought that that made complete sense. So that was my sort of decision as to go about choosing Fletcher at that time. But I think, for me, like you said, I was very fortunate to sort of enter right after graduation. It didn't happen like it wasn't like I entered first day of my law school and I was like, okay, international law is my thing. It was not at all like that. I was massively confused. I remember in my fourth year taking that half an hour walk, deciding that I'm not going to sit for placements only because everybody else around me was sitting, and telling myself that no, if international law is my thing, then I have to go for it. So I think it's very, very normal to have those moments, but in the end, it's about having that intuition. For me, it was like choosing a subject that after a year or two I would not be bored of. Choosing a subject that I feel like, if there was one area of it that I don't want to work, I still would have an option to explore the other areas in the same field. Like I didn't want to lose out on the 5 years of law school by going for a non-law degree, because I really did love learning law. And at the same time, I wanted a course which offered me hard skills and offered me soft skills and offered me opportunities to explore other fields, just in case I realized that sticking to a very, very specific field of law is not my thing post graduation. So I think when you're looking at a lot of these things and looking at the kind of general guidance that my professors at GNLU were offering me, it just seemed like a very, very sort of natural transition to Fletcher.
Yep. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's a very interesting story too. So thanks a lot for that. And with that, I think I do come to the end of the Q&A session. So thanks a lot for answering those questions, Swati. It was wonderful to have you here with us today, and I'm sure that this is going to be very, very useful for students in the future who are considering Fletcher. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you to Planty. Thank you, Abhishek, for having me here. And yeah, I really hope that that answers a lot of questions for students. And it's not just about Fletcher. I think the idea is that a lot of these considerations are so general that I think if students keep that in mind, it's easier to make a decision of whatever other school you want to go for. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
Just